I'm joined now by Dan Perkins from Tampa, Florida. He's an author and political commentator who supports Donald Trump. Dan, thanks for joining us. Let's begin with health care and the domestic issues that Trump is dealing with right now. How much of a setback would you call the GOP, the collapse of the GOP health care?
Well, thank you for having me on. I would say that I'm disappointed that the Republicans in the Senate couldn't come together and put a bill in place. But I think the president has taken the right step. If the Senate is not going to be able to come up with a repeal and replacement bill, then he said, I'm going to let the Obamacare policies basically destroy themselves. We've got another rate increase coming in November this year, and there'll be a second rate increase if anybody's left in the business in November, just before the 2018 midterm elections. So the president's disappointed, but he doesn't write the laws. He doesn't pass the laws. He only signs the laws. And he wants his party to do what he tried to get done when he was campaigning. But the political reality is, at least right now, as he calls it, the swamp is not inclined to do things that are necessarily best for America, but maybe best for the politicians.
Now, Trump's Republican Party controls both the U.S. House and the Senate. Are you surprised? Have you been surprised by all these uphill battles? I mean, a lot of people are wondering, some of his voters, why they couldn't just get it done.
Well, I think that's a great question. Uphill battles. Clearly that the leadership in both the Democrat and the Republican Party and the senior politicians in both of those parties are all against Mr. Trump. They represent the swamp. They represent all the corruption and things that are bad in Washington. And so they're doing everything they can to protect their jobs, and they attack the president. But I think we have to be very understanding of what the president also said today in a tweet, and that is, we need to have more Republicans in the House and the Senate in order to be able to get done, which means to me, that's code for saying some Republicans may not get reelected because they won't have any support of the administration.
But aren't they getting some pushback from their constituents as well? I mean, they're saying, Mr. Trump, we'd like to be on board, but our voters are telling us this is not what they want.
Well, I think you have to be careful about when you say that, because you're looking at biased, in a sense, polling data. For example, we know that the recent ABC News poll undersurveyed Republicans and oversurveyed Democrats. This was a common tactic that was used during the Hillary campaign, where they undersurveyed Republicans and oversurveyed Democrats. So that you have to read the fine print and the detail of the polling data to test its validity, because sometimes it's not true.
Want to get your reaction to this White House confirmation that Donald Trump had a previously undisclosed meeting or contact with Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the G20 summit. How frustrating has it been for Republicans to see and watch Russia sort of take over his ability to govern?
Well, I don't know that Russia's taking over his ability to govern. I suspect that Russia has taken over the ability of the Democratic Party to respond with anything positive to do with the country. But I would say to you that I think it's important to understand that we're dealing with a message that hasn't yet to be substantiated. Even the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein, continually is being interviewed, and she's saying there's nothing there to support the collusion between the Russian government or the Trump campaign during the campaign. And by the way, is it important for us as Americans to know if the President of the United States met a second time at a world conference with a Russian leader? I don't think it's something that's imperative that I have to know when I go to bed at night. I think that there should be times when political leaders and state leaders should be able to have private conversations that don't necessarily have to be disclosed.
I think a lot of people are concerned that there perhaps wasn't an American with him during that meeting to see what actually happened or what was said. We're just taking the president's word as to what occurred in that meeting. Have you been frustrated, though, by how this investigation is really taking over what really needs to be done. I mean, there is still tax reform that the Republicans want to get done. There's still the issue of a border wall, some of these other issues domestically that people are waiting to see happen.
I think that's a great question. And I would say to you, what are the Democrats doing to discuss those issues? Are they spending a disproportionate amount of time talking about the collusion that never took place with Trump and the Russians? Or are they doing their responsibility as an opposition party to come up and talk about and offer suggestions to resolve problems? And they're not doing that. They're constantly talking about Russia. And I think that the American people, based on a Rasmussen poll, 75% are saying enough over the Russian stuff. You haven't delivered anything that shows that the president did anything wrong. When are you going to act as your responsibility as the fourth estate to do what you should be doing, and that's reporting on a lot more stuff than just Trump and China, and Trump and Russia.
All right, Dan Perkins, we appreciate your perspective. Thank you for joining us from Tampa.